All right, let's dive into one of the most game-changing personal finance books out there, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We're going to break down the core ideas that have totally shifted how millions of people think about money.
And this quote right here, this is the entire foundation of the book. Kiyosaki's big argument is that our schools, well, they teach us how to be good employees, but they teach us absolutely nothing about being good with money. We get really good at working for a paycheck, but we're never taught how to make that paycheck work for us. So to get this idea across, Kiyosaki tells his story through the eyes of his two dads. On one hand, you have his real dad, the poor dad, a super smart, highly educated guy who followed all the traditional rules. Then you have his best friend's dad, the rich dad, who was an 8th grade dropout but became a self-made millionaire. Just look at their advice side by side. It's two completely different ways of seeing the world. Okay, so that brings us to the very first major lesson from Rich Dad. And this one challenges the very reason most of us get up and go to work every single day. See, according to Rich Dad, most of us fall into this trap where we just don't understand how money works. So without even realizing it, we let it control our lives. It creates this endless cycle where you work harder and harder, but you never really seem to get anywhere, which, of course, just makes you frustrated and angry.
And this slide, man, it just lays out that cycle perfectly. Kiyosaki calls it the rat race. Sound familiar? You get up, you go to work to get a paycheck, you use that paycheck to pay your bills, you run out of money, and then you have to do the whole thing all over again. It's just this relentless treadmill of working to survive.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the why. Why do people stay stuck in this loop? It's powered by two of our strongest emotions. First, there's the fear of not being able to pay the bills. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning. But then, as soon as that paycheck hits, desire takes over, and you think of all the cool stuff you can buy. It's this constant emotional push and pull that ends up running most people's financial lives.
So what's the way out? Well, this is it. It's a total shift in how you think. To escape the rat race, you have to stop being a slave to your paycheck and instead become the master of your money. You have to stop working for it and figure out how to make your money work for you.
Okay, so how in the world do you actually do that? How do you make money work for you? Well, it all starts with one fundamental piece of financial knowledge, maybe the single most important rule in the entire book.
And it kicks off with a question that, honestly, it messes with your head a bit because it goes against everything we're taught. Just think about it for a second. Is the house you live in a real financial asset? Your gut reaction to that question probably says a lot about your financial education.
To figure that out, Rich Dad has this brilliantly simple definition. Forget all the complicated financial jargon. It's this: an asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. That's it.
And you guessed it, the opposite is just as straightforward. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. The only thing that matters is which way the cash is flowing.
Okay, let's see how this plays out in the real world. This is the financial story for most people, right? The income comes in from their job, and it flows right back out to pay for things like a mortgage, car loans, and credit card bills. These are things they own, sure, but they are constantly draining their cash.
But the wealthy, they play a totally different game. They use their income to buy assets, things like rental properties, stocks that pay dividends, or a business that runs itself. These assets then generate more income, creating a powerful, self-sustaining cycle of wealth.
So, let's circle back to that big question about your house. The two dads saw it in completely different ways. Poor Dad repeated what we all hear: my home is my biggest asset. But Rich Dad, looking only at the cash flow, had a totally different take.
And according to Rich Dad's simple rules, the answer is crystal clear. The house you live in costs you money every single month. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, repairs. It takes money out of your pocket. Therefore, it's a liability. I know. That one's tough to hear, but it's absolutely central to his whole philosophy.
Okay, so if you get that, it leads right into the next big idea, which is all about where you should be putting your focus and energy if you actually want to build wealth. Kiyosaki tells this amazing story about Ray Kroc, the guy who founded McDonald's. He was speaking to a class of business students, and when they asked him what business he was in, he gave this incredible answer. Everyone in the room thought he was in the hamburger business, but he knew his real business was acquiring the incredibly valuable real estate underneath all those golden arches.
And that story perfectly illustrates this huge distinction we all need to understand. Your profession is your job. It's how you make money to pay the bills. But your business is your asset column. That's the thing you build over time that actually makes you wealthy. They are not the same thing.
Now, this doesn't mean you go and quit your job tomorrow. No way. The advice is actually really practical. You keep your day job, your profession, but you start minding your own business. That means you start deliberately taking a part of your income, not to buy a bigger house or a nicer car, but to systematically buy real income-producing assets. You focus on growing that asset column.
And that right there is the secret sauce. Most people are obsessed with getting a bigger paycheck, a raise, a higher salary. They're focused on their income. The rich, on the other hand, are obsessed with building their asset column. And that single difference in focus is what creates a massive difference in wealth over a lifetime.
So let's end with the question that pulls this all together for you. You know your profession, what you do for work. But after hearing all this, take a second and ask yourself, what business are you really in? Because minding that business could be the most important financial move you ever make.